Every morning, as the sun broke through the horizon, the orange tabby cat sat by the storm drain on Elm Street, his golden eyes fixed on the dark opening. The world around him buzzed with life, but Hero, as the neighbors had begun to call him, never moved, not even when the weather turned stormy, soaking his fur with rain or baking him under the hot sun. Hero's vigil never wavered. Maria Santos, a jogger who passed the spot every morning, first noticed him on her run. At first, she thought he was just another stray. But the next day, and the day after that, there he was, still in the same spot, unmoving. That's strange, she muttered to herself as she slowed her pace. The cat didn't even flinch as she passed by. She squinted, trying to make sense of it. The weather had been harsh lately, and yet he remained, staring at the drain as if waiting for something. His tail twitched slightly, but his focus never faltered. Maria's curiosity deepened. Later, as she jogged past again, she noticed that other neighbors had started watching too. Mrs. Kowalski, from the third floor, had been observing him for hours. She leaned out of her window, her old eyes narrowing, as she stared down. Something's not right about that cat, she told her neighbor, Mr. Hassan, who stood beside her. What do you mean? Mr. Hassan asked, his brow furrowed. I don't know. He hasn't moved 4 hours, doesn't even eat. Cats don't do that, Mrs. Kowalski said, a worried tone creeping into her voice. It's like he's guarding something. Frank Morrison, who lived a few houses down, had noticed the strange behavior too. I've lived here for 40 years, Frank said as he passed by the cat with his German shepherd. Cats don't act like that unless there's something wrong. As the day wore on, a small crowd gathered, each person watching the cat with growing concern. His silence was unsettling, like he was guarding something that no one else could see. Maria stopped by again, her jog finished for the day. She couldn't help herself. She needed to know what was happening. What's got you so worried, little guy? She murmured to Hero, leaning down to look at him. The cat's gaze shifted briefly to her, his amber eyes locking onto hers for a heartbeat. He let out a soft, plaintive meow, the kind of sound that tugged at the heart. It wasn't a sound of hunger. It wasn't a sound of distress either. It was ... urgent. Maria's heart skipped a beat. Something's wrong, she whispered. But what could it be? The cat remained still, never moving from his post by the drain. His eyes never left the dark opening, as if something down there was waiting. The crowd whispered among themselves, unsure what to do. They all felt it, the strange sense of importance hanging in the air. The feeling that this cat wasn't just waiting for food or attention. No, he was waiting for something else. And whatever it was, it had to be big. Days passed, and Hero's strange behavior became the talk of the neighborhood. It was as if everyone was drawn to him, unable to look away from the unwavering cat sitting by the storm drain. His golden eyes never blinked, never wavered. His fur was soaked with rain one day, and sun-drenched the next, yet he didn't budge. He didn't seek food. He didn't interact with the neighbors. He simply stared, unmoving, as if guarding something far more important than anyone could see. Maria, who had first noticed him, found herself returning again and again. At first, she thought it was just a cat being a cat, a little odd, but nothing more. But now, as she jogged past every morning, something gnawed at her. She couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong. Why hasn't he moved? She muttered to herself one morning, slowing her pace as she passed Hero. He didn't even glance at her. His attention was entirely on the drain. A shiver ran down her spine. She couldn't explain it, but the cat felt ... different. Mrs. Kowalski, watching from her window, saw the same thing. He hasn't moved 4 hours, she said, shaking her head. And I've never seen him eat. What's he guarding? Maria stopped, glancing up at Mrs. Kowalski. That's what I'm wondering, she replied, a little unsettled by the thought. It's like he's waiting for something. Mrs. Kowalski pressed her hands against the window. Something's wrong. Cats don't act like this. Maybe we should call someone. Maria watched as Hero's tail flicked nervously. His eyes remained locked on the drain. It was clear. The cat was guarding something. But what? Later that day, Frank Morrison, the old man with the German Shepherd, stood across the street. He'd lived on Elm Street for decades, and even he couldn't ignore the strange sight. Cats don't act like this, he muttered, leaning against his dog's leash. Something's up. Should we do something about it? Mrs. Kowalski asked from her window, her voice full of concern. I don't know, Frank replied, his voice low. But this doesn't feel right. By now, the whole neighborhood was talking about Hero. Some thought he was just a stray, but Maria felt there was more to it. Her curiosity had turned to worrying dots as the sun began to set. She found herself walking toward him again. The air was cooler, and the shadows stretched longer, but Hero was still there. She bent down to speak softly to him. What are you guarding, Hero? She whispered, her voice gentle, but filled with the questions she'd been unable to answer. Hero's golden eyes met hers for a brief moment, then returned to the storm drain. The tension in his body was clear. He was waiting for something only he understood. Maria straightened up slowly. The unease in her chest had turned into a solid, unshakable feeling. Hero wasn't just a cat. He was something more. And whatever he was guarding, it was important. The days turned into a week, and Hero's vigil remained unbroken. More and more neighbors began to take notice, and what was once a strange curiosity became a growing concern. Mr. Hassan, who had watched the cat from his porch, couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He's been sitting there all day again, he said to Frank Morrison, who had just finished walking his dog. Not a single movement. It's like he's stuck. Frank glanced over, his eyebrows furrowed. I've lived here 4 years. Cats don't act like this. He's either waiting for something, or something's wrong. The neighborhood buzzed with questions. Maria, who had become increasingly concerned, stopped by again on her jog. Hero wasn't sitting quietly anymore. His eyes were still fixed on the drain, but now he was pacing back and forth. His body was tense, his tail flicking wildly. Every now and then, he let out a desperate meow that echoed through the street. Maria stopped, watching him for a moment. Why does he keep meowing like that? She whispered. It's like he's calling for help. I don't know, Frank replied, but it doesn't feel like a regular cat. It's like he's trying to tell us something. Mr. Hassan joined them, his face serious. I think you're right. I've been watching him 4 hours. The meowing, it's not normal. Hero stopped pacing for a moment and looked at them. His amber eyes seemed to pierce through them, as if trying to communicate something urgent. Then, without warning, he let out a sharp, heart-wrenching cry and dashed toward the drain, his paws skimming the ground in frantic circles. He's losing it, Maria said softly, her voice filled with worrying. What's happening to him? Frank looked around at the gathering crowd. It's like he's guarding something. But what? The storm drain now felt like a portal to something hidden, something dangerous. The people watching from their windows or porches started to feel the weight of it, the pressure building in the air. Something was wrong. As Hero continued to pace, his desperation growing with each passing minute, Maria knelt down, trying to reach him. What is it, Hero? She whispered, but the cat didn't respond. He was too absorbed in his frantic mission. I've never seen a cat behave like this, Mr. Hassan said, his voice filled with growing concern. It's as if he's waiting for someone, or something. The once curious onlookers now felt the danger in the air. The cat wasn't just guarding the drain anymore, he was warning them. The quiet neighborhood had turned into a place filled with uncertainty, and the only certainty now was that Hero wasn't going to give up. The storm drain wasn't just a hole in the ground, it was a place holding a mystery, and Hero wasn't leaving until it was uncovered. Frank couldn't take it anymore. The sight of Hero pacing, meowing frantically, and staring at the storm drain had shaken him to his core. "This isn't normal," he muttered, pulling out his phone. "Something's wrong." Maria, who had been watching the cat closely, nodded in agreement. "I thought I was the only one who felt it," she said. "It's like he's trying to tell us something." Frank dialed animal control. He didn't know what was happening, but it was clear they needed help. Moments later, Officer Sarah Chen arrived. She parked her car, and as she stepped out, she immediately noticed the growing crowd and the orange tabby, still fixated on the drain. "Hello, everyone," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. "What seems to be the problem?" Maria stepped forward. "It's the cat. He's been here 4 days, just staring at the storm drain. He hasn't eaten or moved. It's like he's guarding it." Sarah studied Hero, watching the way his body was tensed, his tail flicking nervously. "I see what you mean," she said, kneeling down to get a closer look. She reached out, gently tapping the cat's back. "Hey there, buddy. What's going on?" Hero didn't move. His eyes remained locked on the drain. He let out a desperate meow, louder than before. It was as if he was pleading for someone to understand. Sarah's heart raced. There was something unsettling about this whole situation. She could feel the weight of Hero's anxiety. Something was definitely wrong. She crawled closer to the storm drain, her flashlight in hand. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Everyone fell silent. At first, there was nothing but the distant hum of traffic, but then a faint sound reached their ears, whimpering. "Oh my God," Sarah muttered under her breath. "There's something down there." The crowd grew restless, murmurs spreading through the air. Frank stepped forward. "You think it's animals trapped?" Sarah didn't answer immediately. She turned her flashlight into the darkness of the drain, but the light barely penetrated the gloom. The whimpering continued, and now it was clear there was something alive down there, something in need of help. "I'm calling for a backup," Sarah said, standing up quickly. "We need a rescue team here now." The urgency in her voice sent a ripple of fear through the neighbors. They hadn't realized how serious the situation had become. Hero had been trying to warn them, trying to get them to listen. The cat wasn't guarding a mystery. He was guarding a life to lives, perhaps, and it was up to them to save them. Maria stepped closer to Hero, who still hadn't moved from his spot. "We'll get them out, buddy, I promise." With that, the tension in the air deepened as the first steps toward a rescue mission began. The stakes had been raised. Something had to be done, and fast. The sound of sirens filled the air as emergency vehicles rushed to the scene. The tension in the neighborhood was palpable. Everyone had gathered, watching as firefighters, animal control, and police officers prepared for the rescue. Frank, Maria, and the rest of the crowd stood in nervous silence, their eyes fixed on Hero. Hero's pacing had stopped. The cat was now still, but his body was tense, his ears forward, eyes locked on the storm drain. His tail twitched every few seconds, but his focus never wavered. It was as if he knew the rescue was finally about to begin. The frantic, desperate energy he had shown earlier had shifted into something else, something calmer, more determined. Hero was no longer just guarding the drain. He was waiting for the moment when his family would be brought to safety. Officer Sarah Chen walked over to the team of firefighters. "We'll need to act fast," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "The animals could be hurt, or worse, if we don't get them out soon." The firefighters nodded and began to prepare the necessary equipment, ropes, harnesses, and flashlights. They were ready to go into the storm drain, and there was no time to waste. Hero watched them, his golden eyes never leaving the action. He let out a soft meow, almost as if encouraging them. The rescuers, understanding the importance of the task, moved into position. "We're going in," one of the firefighters said, checking his harness. "Stay close, And be careful, Maria, standing just behind the line of rescuers, whispered to Hero. They're going to get them, buddy. You've been so strong. The firefighter, Jake Rodriguez, turned his head to her, giving a nod. We'll get them out. Don't worry. As he descended into the drain, the neighborhood watched in tense silence. Hero, who had been standing still, took a few steps forward, his eyes glued to the opening. The seconds stretched into what felt like minutes as Jake slowly made his way deeper into the drain. Then, the first hint of success, a faint, muffled sound of movement. The kitten, the puppy, both alive. Hero's body relaxed, just a little, but his watchfulness never faltered. Jake's voice echoed back up. I've got them, he said. A kitten and a puppy. They're scared but alive. I'm bringing them up. The crowd exhaled a collective sigh of relief, but Hero remained poised, his focus unwavering. He knew this wasn't over yet. As the kitten was lifted first, Hero's tail flicked, his body tense once again. When the kitten was safely handed to Maria, Hero rushed forward, his eyes filled with relief. He stretched up on his hind legs, as if reaching for the tiny creature. Easy, Hero, Maria whispered, gently holding the kitten. You did it. You protected them. But there was still one more to bring up the puppy. And as the firefighter reached for the small brown dog, the crowd held its breath. The stakes were still high. Hero wasn't done yet. Not until his family was whole again. The rescue was just beginning. But there was hope. And with Hero watching, there was no doubt they would succeed. The rescue team worked quickly, but the deeper they went into the storm drain, the more complicated things became. Jake Rodriguez, the firefighter leading the way, called out from below, his voice echoing against the cold, damp walls of the tunnel. This is worse than I thought, Jake muttered, his words strained. The tunnel's narrower down here. I can barely move. From above, Hero stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the dark opening. He could hear the tension in Jake's voice, and it only made his heart race faster. The situation was escalating. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was a fight against time. Maria watched anxiously, holding the kitten close to her chest. Do you think they're okay? She asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Frank, standing beside her, nodded, but didn't say anything. His eyes were locked on Hero, who was pacing back and forth now, as if sensing that something was wrong. Hero's body was taut with nervous energy, his tail flicking sharply. He wasn't just worried, he was a father, desperate to make sure his family was safe. We'll get them out, Sarah, the animal control officer, said firmly, trying to reassure everyone. But we need to be careful. The tunnel could collapse if we're not careful. Suddenly, Jake's voice cut through the tension. I found them, he said, relief in his tone, though it was quickly replaced by urgency. They're alive. But they're in bad shape. The sound of frantic whimpering and weak meowing reached the surface. Hero's ears perked up. The puppy, barely a few months old, was shaking from fear and exhaustion. The kitten, too young to be out in the world alone, huddled close to the puppy, trembling. They're scared, Jake said, his voice filled with sympathy. They're not injured, but they've been down here too long. We need to get them out fast. Maria's breath caught in her throat. What can we do? She asked, her voice trembling. Just hold on, Sarah replied, her face set with determination. Jake's bringing them up now. From above, Hero let out a soft, low meow, as if encouraging Jake, urging him to move faster. His gaze never wavered. The bond between him and his family was clear. He wasn't just guarding a storm drain, he was protecting his baby and his friend. No matter the cost, the first animal, the kitten, was lifted carefully into the light. Hero's eyes locked onto the tiny creature, and he rushed forward, nearly knocking into the firefighters as he made his way to it. He sniffed the kitten, nuzzling it gently with his head. Maria held her breath, watching as the kitten, though scared, nuzzled back, as if it knew it was finally safe. But there was still the puppy. The tension hadn't eased yet, and Hero's watchful eyes stayed fixed on the drain. The deeper they went, the more urgent it became. His family wasn't safe yet. The air was thick with tension as the firefighter, Jake, carefully lifted the small, trembling puppy from the storm drain. Every eye in the crowd was fixed on the rescue, but none more so than Hero's. His golden eyes never left the tunnel entrance, as if he could feel the moment drawing near. His body was tense, every muscle coiled with anticipation. Almost there. "Buddy," Frank whispered, his voice barely audible over the hushed crowd. "They're coming home." Hero's ears twitched at the sound of Jake's voice, and he let out a soft meow, as if acknowledging the progress. The puppy, small and covered in dirt, was handed to Maria, who cradled it carefully in her arms. She looked at Hero, and her heart swelled. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. Jake appeared again, this time with the last animal, the puppy's tiny companion. "We've got them both," Jake called out, his voice full of relief. "They're safe now." Hero stepped forward, his eyes wide with emotion. His body trembled as he watched the firefighter hand over the kitten to Maria. The orange tabby rushed to the kitten, nudging it gently with his nose. His tail flicked, and for a moment, he just stood there, looking at the tiny creature as if making sure it was truly okay. Maria knelt down, holding the kitten carefully. Hero's eyes softened, the raw intensity of his gaze replaced with something gentler, something full of love. He let out a soft trilling sound, as if to say, "Thank you." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes as she watched the reunion. "You did it," she whispered to Hero. "You kept them safe." The kitten let out a weak meow in response, and Hero immediately began grooming it, licking the fur gently. He was no longer just a cat guarding a storm drain, he was a father, reunited with his baby. The puppy, still trembling, joined them, nuzzling against Hero's side. He licked the puppy's face, as if offering comfort. "This is incredible," Jake said, watching the emotional reunion unfold. "I've never seen anything like this." Hero's relief was palpable. The tension that had held him so tight 4 days began to fade, replaced by a deep, unwavering joy. His family was safe. They were together. The crowd that had gathered began to applaud, some even wiping tears from their eyes. But Hero didn't notice. He was too focused on his family, too caught up in the pure joy of this moment. His vigil had ended. His mission was complete. For the first time in what felt like forever, Hero could rest, and as he settled down beside the kitten and the puppy, his eyes closed softly, a gentle purr vibrating in his chest. The Hero had done his job, and now his family was whole again. The storm had passed, and for the first time in days, the neighborhood felt still. The air was calm, the tension easing as the rescue team brought the kitten and puppy to the clinic. Hero, though visibly relieved, stayed by their side, his eyes never straying far from his family. His role as their protector was clear. He wasn't just a stray cat. He was a guardian, a father who had done whatever it took to keep his loved ones safe. Maria watched from the clinic window, her hands pressed against the glass. She couldn't help but think of how she had first dismissed Hero's strange behavior. What had seemed odd, even annoying, at first had turned into something heroic. She had never imagined that this small, orange cat would be the one to save 2 lives. "I never thought he was capable of something like this," Frank said, his voice filled with awe. He stood next to Maria, watching Hero from outside the clinic. "He's not just a cat. He's a hero." Maria nodded, her eyes still fixed on the trio inside the clinic. Hero was sitting beside the kitten and the puppy, his body tense but gentle, as if making sure they were both okay. He occasionally licked their fur, his movements tender, protective. "I've lived here for years," Frank continued, his voice soft. "I've never seen anything like this. I thought he was just a stray. But he's so much more." Maria turned to Frank, I never understood how deep the bond between animals could go. It's like Hero knew they needed him, and he didn't leave. Frank chuckled softly. It's not just about being loyal. It's about love. He loves them. The neighbors who had gathered around, once simply curious, now looked on with a new sense of respect. Hero wasn't just some street cat. He was part of their community now, a symbol of what it meant to protect, to fight for family. No matter the cost, I think we all owe him an apology, Mrs. Kowalski said quietly from her window. We thought he was just being difficult, but he was doing his job all along. Maria smiled faintly, wiping a tear from her cheek. He was more than just guarding a drain. He was guarding his family. As Hero continued to watch over the kitten and puppy, his eyes calm but watchful, the neighbors realized something. Hero's quiet strength had changed them. What they had once seen as strange behavior was, in reality, a powerful act of love. His actions had brought the whole neighborhood together, teaching them the true meaning of family and protection. Look at him, Maria whispered, more to herself than anyone else. He's their hero. And as Hero sat there, his vigil finally complete, the storm outside had truly passed. For the first time in days, there was peace. The clinic was quiet, save for the soft sounds of the rescued animals settling into their cages. Hero sat just outside the exam room, his gaze fixed on the door where the kitten and the puppy were being checked. He hadn't moved from his spot since they arrived. His eyes were full of exhaustion, but there was a fierce, protective determination in them. Dr. Williams, the veterinarian, walked out of the room, a concerned expression on her face. She'd finished the initial exams, but something about Hero's behavior was still bothering her. She turned to Officer Sarah Chen, who had been watching Hero closely. There's a deep bond between this cat and the puppy, Dr. Williams said, her voice thoughtful. But what's even more remarkable, his connection with the kitten. Sarah looked down at Hero, who was now pacing outside the door, clearly restless. He's been like this the whole time, Sarah said. Protective, but I thought it was just instinct. I had no idea it went this deep. Dr. Williams nodded. It's more than instinct. He's their father. Not biologically, but emotionally. He's bonded with both of them. Especially the kitten. There's something remarkable about their connection. But before Sarah could respond, she noticed something on Dr. Williams's desk, an old photo album. Curiosity pulled her closer, and she flipped it open. She froze when she saw the photo of Hero. That's him, Sarah whispered. The cat was in the picture, his golden eyes staring at the camera. But there's something strange about this. He's been involved in other rescues. Dr. Williams walked over and looked at the photo with Sarah. Yes, that's Hero. I remember hearing about him from other cases. He was spotted during a house fire a few years ago, trying to get the firefighters' attention. They found an elderly woman trapped in her basement after following him. Sarah was stunned. He was saving people. Even back then. Apparently, Dr. Williams said. And there's more. Last year, a missing child was found after Hero led searches to a drainage culvert where the girl had fallen and couldn't climb out. The realization hit Sarah hard. He's not just a cat. He's a protector. A guardian. Dr. Williams nodded. He's been saving lives for years. And we've only just realized it. Hero's gentle meow interrupted the conversation, his eyes full of an almost knowing sadness. He had done his job. He had saved his family. But the question still lingered. What else had Hero done? How many other lives had he quietly saved, without ever asking for anything in return? As Sarah watched him, her heart swelled with a new respect. This wasn't just a stray cat. Hero had a purpose, a deep and unbreakable bond with those he loved. And in that moment, Sarah realized that the world would never fully understand just how far this cat had gone to protect others. But she would never forget. Hero, Sarah whispered, looking at the cat, you're more than anyone could ever imagine. The final test wasn't just the rescue, it was the revelation that Hero had always been a hero. Even before anyone knew it. It had been days since Hero's vigil ended, and now the small orange tabby cat stood at the threshold of a new life. The Henderson family, who had been following his story from the very beginning, were moved by his bravery. They had already agreed to adopt Hero, the kitten, Sunny, and the puppy, Buddy. They could feel the connection between them, and they knew this family of 3 needed to stay together. "Look at him," said Beth Henderson, her eyes filled with awe. "He's more than just a cat. He's been through so much." Her husband, Mike, stood beside her, nodding. "He's a protector, a hero in every sense. And now he's found a home." Maria, standing nearby, watched the scene unfold with a bittersweet smile. She had never imagined that the strange cat she'd seen at the storm drain would become such a symbol of hope and love. She had witnessed Hero's courage, and now she saw him finally getting the peace he deserved. "Do you think he knows?" Maria asked, her voice soft. "Does he know this is where he belongs now?" Frank, who had been there through the entire journey, answered, "I think he knows. He's been fighting for his family, and now he's with them." Hero stepped into the Henderson family's backyard, where Sunny and Buddy were already playing. Hero's gaze shifted between them, and then he lay down, his body finally relaxing. The tension that had clung to him for so long melted away. His role as protector had never been more clear. He was their hero, and now he could rest. Beth knelt down beside Hero, stroking his fur gently. "You did it, boy," she whispered. "You saved them." Sunny trotted over to him, nudging his head against Hero's side, while Buddy curled up next to them. The 3 animals, once lost and alone, now found comfort in one another's presence. They were finally a family. Maria watched from the porch, tears welling in her eyes. "Sometimes the greatest heroes come in the most unlikely forms," she said quietly. Like Hero, he didn't ask for any of this, but he gave everything. He had to protect the ones he loved. Frank put a hand on her shoulder. "That's what true heroism is, Maria. It's love, it's sacrifice, and it's doing what's right, even when no one is watching." As the sun began to set, Hero curled up beside his family, content and peaceful. The neighborhood had witnessed a quiet miracle, one that would change them forever. The story of Hero and his family wasn't just about a cat rescuing a puppy and a kitten. It was about the power of love and the unbreakable bond that family can form, even in the most unexpected ways. And as Hero lay there, surrounded by the warmth of his new home, the community understood. Real heroes don't wear capes. Some heroes have whiskers, and some heroes are simply willing to fight for those they love. "Thank you, Hero," Maria whispered to herself, her heart full. "You've shown us all what it means to be brave." With Hero's journey complete, the once strange cat had found his rest, and in that peace, he knew that his family, the ones he loved and protected, were safe.